Welcome to Miss Carol's art class. We are going over how to use Adobe Photoshop to combine two images, and this is part 2. We'll be using image adjustment tools, including color correction and photo filter, and we'll also be using dodge and burn tools. Okay, so this is where I left off on the last video. Obviously, a lot of work needs to happen. We have the older, current image of Britney Spears and her younger version of herself. And I've kind of erased her arm here. I also need to erase her arm over here. And later on, we will crop this as well. But if you look at these two images, the color looks very different because the younger version of Britney has a lot of yellow, warm colors, and the current version of Britney has a lot of cooler blue tones in the color. So first we could do this in this project, but I'm going to go back to this image here. I'm going to turn off the background, and we're going to play with this image first. And I want to show you, if you go up here to the top and go to Image, go to Adjustments, you have a lot of options in here. So you can adjust the brightness or contrast, levels, curves, hue, saturation, color balance. This is also where you'll find that photo filter. So wait until the end to do the photo filter, which will kind of unify both images. First, just try to get this one to match the other as best as possible. So you can do that by going to color balance. You can play with the shadows, midtones, or highlights. So just for the midtones, I'm going to make this a little bit cooler, some greens and blues. And then I'm going to do the same with the highlights. Move my cursor over to greens and blues, maybe some magenta actually, and some blue. It's already looking a lot cooler. I'm going to do the same with the shadows. And you can always go back and adjust this however you'd like. That's pretty warm. I'm going to do green. Okay, so that is significantly different than what it was before, and that was just really quick, so I would definitely take my time. This is so big. I would definitely take my time playing around with it to get it exactly how I want. But you can just see, just by looking at this here, how different that is. She looks very yellow in the original version, and she's already looking a lot better. So I'm going to go ahead and delete that layer. Yes. Alright, so the other thing that you can do, if you look at these two images, Britney is having her photo taken, so a lot of the light source that is hitting the current Britney Spears is coming from the cameras, which is right in front of her face. So that's why you see the highlights on her face here and the highlights on her hair. Whereas this image down here, the light source is above. It's a very yellow light, so it's hitting her hair, the highlights of her cheekbones, and the tops of her shoes. And there's also some weird lighting happening on the jeans. So there's some things that we can do with that too. So we can go over here. Right now it says sponge tool, so if I click and hold, I'm going to have some other options. I have my dodge tool and my burn tool, and you can change the size of that. I'm going to zoom in as well. And you can also change if you want to do the highlights, midtones, or shadows. So I'm going to do highlights, 24% exposure. You can always kick that up to 100 if you wanted to. And again, this is another thing that you're going to have to play around with. Just like if you were drawing by hand, it's going to look more natural if you go with, that's bad, if you go with, like if you're doing the hair, for example, you want to go with the strands of the hair. Just like if you were drawing something by hand. That's going to make it look more natural, more real. So you can see this is just really hitting those highlights up there and darkening this up a little bit. This is at 100%, so you could even give it some more variation and go a little bit lower on the percentage. The other thing that you can do is you can use the dodge tool, which it's that is on the highlights. Let's kick it up to 100%. And that's going to lighten things, which is the opposite of what we're trying to do right now. But that could also come in handy. So like right here on her shirt, I'm gonna get a little bit bigger of a brush. She shouldn't really have this shadow here between her jacket and her shirt if the light is coming from in front of her. So you would want to just go in and lighten that up. That is obviously not what I want to do. So I'm going to go back there. And I'm going to go to shadows and see if that is what I want. It looks better, but the midtones, that works a lot better. And I would even suggest using like a really soft brush for this, just so that it blends into the rest of the outfit. And she even has these shadows here, which if her elbow is facing the light, you really wouldn't have these here either. I wouldn't totally get rid of them because they do give it some definition. Her shirt, it gives her shirt some texture, but you can lighten these up so that it's not so obvious. And again, you can play with the amount of exposure that you give it as well. So this is going to be unique to your project. You're going to have to pay attention to, one, where the light source is coming from. Like I said, on this one, it's coming from the top, so that needs to be corrected. And then also the color of the image. So we fixed this one a little bit. It could still stand to use some color correction. But the other thing that you can do, which is really going to help, that was locked, I'm gonna unlock that. You can either do one layer, so I can take this layer of the younger Brittany and I can go to Image, Adjustments, and Photo Filter. And there's some presets here that you can use. So I can make it, there's a bunch of different cooling filters, make it a little bit cooler. You can also manually select the color that you want to do and the density, so you can make it very, very blue or just slightly blue. And that's up to you, however you'd like to go about that. You could even select some of these down here, like a deep blue. And that will also help, and even with the presets, you can select the density. And that will also help add some unity between the two photos. Okay. If you want to do a photo filter on both of them, you can go to Image, you can go to Layer and Flatten Image. And that's going to take all of your layers and turn them into one layer. So if that's not what you want to do, you can go back in your history and undo it, but that is what I want to do. So I'm going to take my one layer and go up here to Image, Adjustments, Photo Filter. And now I can color both of these at the same time because it's now one image. You can add the density, make it lighter, darker. So now what I'm seeing as I'm doing this is that this Brittany here is less saturated than this Brittany here. So now that I realize that's something I need to fix, I can go back and unflatten my image. This is my history right here. You can always find it by going to Window and then the window that you want, History. I'm going to undo my flattened image, and I'm going to go to my layers, and this is the younger Brittany here. And I want to do image adjustments. You can try auto tone and see if that does what you want it to do. But I want her to be more saturated, so I'm going to go to hue saturation. So you can play with the saturation, and I'm going to go to cancel and see if it actually helps if I go to vibrance. So again, all of these options, these are things that you have at your disposal. You also have a saturation option under vibrance. Kick that up a little bit. So now I have to flatten my image, layer, flatten image. Now I can go to image and photo filter. And that looks a lot better. I would still do some work on her hair, and obviously the highlights that are up there on her hair need to be fixed. They need to be corrected. The highlights on her shoes need to be corrected. But I would do a little bit more color correction because her hair should not be that red. It wasn't originally. So that's all things that you should be able to do now with your dodge and burn tools.